Hello students, this is your history lesson. Today we are going to read chapter 1, The Rise of Islamic Civilization from Understanding History for class 7. So we start our lesson. First of all, have a look on glossary. Decline. To go down in amount or quality, weaken. Persecution. Hostility and ill treatment, especially because of race or political or religious beliefs. Inlay, a design pattern, a piece of material inlaid in something. Collapsed, having fallen down or given way. Peninsula, a piece of land almost surrounded by water. Demise, death. Tenure, the period of holding any office or position. Manuscripts, a book or other documents written by hand. Depiction, the action of depicting something, especially in a work of art. Rebel, a person who opposes a person or group in authority. Premier, premier or premier, a mount range between France and Spain. Martyrdom, the death or suffering of a martyr. Immensely, to great extent. Moors or moor, an area of open and usually high land with poor soil that is covered mainly with grass and heather. Patronized, treated in a way that is apparently kind or helpful, but that betrays a feeling of superiority. Prominent, outstanding, important. Sacked, dismissed from employment. Inhabitants, residents, people living in a particular place. Innovate, to develop something. Territories or territory, an area that is under the control of a particular country or political leader. Dynasties, a succession of people from the same family. Now come to the chapter 1, The Rise of Islamic Civilization. This is page number 2 from your book. So you are supposed to open page 2 from your book and read and understand more about this chapter. The Roman Empire comes to an end. Students, the Roman Empire was the post-republican period of ancient Rome. The ancient empire centered on the city of Rome. The Roman Empire, founded in 27 BC, was a vast and powerful domain that gave rise to the culture, laws, technologies, and institutions. The Roman Empire had reached its highest point in the 2nd century CE, but it took another 300 years to decline. Decline turned down. The Roman civilization was gradually replaced by the rise and spread of Christianity. Despite the persecution persecution, oppression of the early Christians. The conversion of the Byzantine ruler Constantine to Christianity in the early 4th century was the beginning of Rome's decline in the western part of its empire. So, what is Christianity? Christianity is the most widely practiced religion in the world, more than 2 billion followers. The Christian faith centers on belief regarding the birth, life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. At the same time, with corrupt rulers, weak governments, and attacks by barbarian tribes from North and West Europe in the 5th century CE, the Roman Empire collapsed in 476. The fall of Rome meant the end of a highly developed way of life in education, literacy, architecture, and the rule of written law. So, Roman emperor known as Constantine the Great. He was the first Roman emperor to be converted to Christianity, and in 324 made Christianity a state religion. In 330 he moved his capital from Rome to Byzantium, renaming it Constantinople, and barbarian, a word that today often refers to uncivilized people or evil deeds. In Europe, there were 5 major barbarian tribes, and each of them hated Rome. The barbarian tribes wanted to destroy Rome. The barbarians were destroying Rome and Roman towns and cities in the outer edges of the empire. So students, we can see the Roman Empire had been progressive empire in the second century, and after 300 years its downfall started. The Roman civilization was replaced by Christianity. Now come to the Middle Ages. In the second paragraph we will read about the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. In the history of Europe, the Middle Ages or medieval period lasted approximately from the 5th to the last 5th century. It began with the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Europe entered the period known as the Middle Ages, which lasted for nearly 1,000 years, c. 500 to 1500, from the fall of the Roman Empire to the Age of Discovery and the Renaissance. This period is also known as the Dark Ages because of the collapse of law and order and civilized life, and the lack of interest in knowledge. The eastern half of the Roman Empire, known as the Byzantine Empire, continued under rulers like Heraclius 610 to 641 till their defeat by the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II in 1453. Sultan Mehmed II made Constantinople the capital of the Ottoman Empire, renaming it Istanbul. So students, Heraclius was the Byzantine emperor from 610 to 641. Heraclius' reign was marked by several military campaigns. Heraclius' Eastern Roman emperor was recognized and strengthened the imperial administration and the imperial armies, but who nevertheless lost Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and Byzantine Mesopotamia to the Arab Muslims. And what is Ottoman Empire? Ottoman Empire created by Turkish tribes that grew to be one of the most powerful states in the world. The Ottoman period spanned more than 600 years and came to an end only in 1922 when it was replaced by the Turkish Republic and various successor states in the southeastern Europe and the Middle East. Page number 3, the rise of Islam. Islam as a religion took root in the holy cities of Mecca and Medina in the Arabian Peninsula. A piece of land almost surrounded by water. By the time of the death of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in 632, all of Arabia had converted to Islam. Hazrat Abu Bakr Raziallahu Ta'ala anhu, in his short tenure, the period of holding office or position, further consolidated the religion in the peninsula by defeating false prophets and rebels. Rebel, a person who opposes a person or group. And consolidated means made firm, strengthen. The next victory was the defeat of the Byzantine Empire. We have read already about this. And as a result, Syria also came under Muslim rule. Under the rightly guided Khulafa Raziallahu Ta'ala anhu, especially Hazrat Umar Raziallahu Ta'ala anhu, Persia, Egypt, the Middle East and North Africa became part of the Islamic Empire. The extent of Muslim influence stretched from the borders of China in the east to the Pyrenees mountains in the west, a mountain range between France and Spain, covering the Indian subcontinent, Central Asia, the Middle East, North Africa, Sicily, and the Iberian Peninsula, Spain. Hazrat Uthman Raziallah also strengthened the frontiers of the Islamic Empire. So students, we can say the first Arab Muslim Empire established during the 7th century. After subduing rebellions in the Arabian Peninsula, Arab Muslim armies began to swiftly conquer territory in the neighboring Byzantine Empire. Emergence of Muslim dynastic rule. After the rule of the rightly guided Khulafa Raziallahu Ta'ala anhu ended with the martyrdom of Hazrat Ali Raziallahu Ta'ala anhu in 661. The Muslim territories came to be ruled by different dynasties, and each in its unique way contributed immensely greatly to Islamic civilization. Arabs, Persians, Turks, Moors, and people from Central Asia contributed in terms of scholarship, art and architecture, administration, Spain, sciences and technology. Islam was taken beyond Arabia by the Arab armies under the Khulafa'i Rashidin Raziallahu Ta'ala anhu. Umayyads and Abbasids, as well as by traders, travelers, and scholars. Umayyads and Abbasids. The Umayyads were the first dynasty to take over the institute of Caliphate, transforming it into an inheritable title. They were responsible for bringing centralization and stability to the realm, and they also continued the swift military expansion of the empire. And the Abbasid Caliphate was the third caliphate to succeed the Islamic prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It was founded by a dynasty descended from Muhammad's uncle Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, from whom the dynasty takes its name. So, students, we can say Islam spread through military conquest, trade, pilgrimage, and missionaries. Arab Muslim forces conquered vast territories and built imperial structures over time. Over a period of few hundred years, Islam spread from its place of origin in the Arabian Peninsula all the way to modern Spain in the west and northern India in the east. Early on in Islamic history, under the Rashidun Caliphate, the region of the first four caliphs or successors from 632 to 661 CE and the Umayyads Caliphate, Arab Muslim forces expanded quickly. After the Khulafai Rashidin radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the Umayyads came to power, followed by the Abbasids, whose rule ended when the Mongols under Hulagu Khan, also known as Hulagu Khan, captured and destroyed Baghdad in 1258. The Abbasids were succeeded by Seljuk, Ottomans, Mamluks, Fatimids, Ayubids, Safavids, and the Mughals, who extended the frontiers of the Muslim empire. All of these dynasties represented the culture and civilization of Islam as it developed over a period of time. Who were Mongols? The Mongol Empire of the 13th and 14th centuries was the largest contiguous land empire in history and the second largest empire by land mass, second only to the British Empire. And who was Hulagu Khan? Hulagu Khan was a Mongol ruler who conquered much of Western Asia. Page number 4, the Umayyads, 661 to 750. The Umayyad dynasty was established by Amir Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and it expanded the Muslim territories within a century of its coming to power. In 711 to 712, an army led by Tariq bin Ziyad crossed the Strait of Gibraltar and conquered all of Spain right up to the Pyrenees mountains near the borders of France. Also in 711 to 712, another army under a 17-year-old Arab general, Muhammad bin Qasim, conquered Sindh up to Multan. Students, Tariq bin Ziyad was a Muslim general who led the Islamic conquest of Hispania in 711 to 718. He is considered to be one of the most important military commanders in Iberian history. Similarly, Muhammad bin Qasim was an Arab military commander of the Umayyad Caliphate who led the Muslim conquest of Sindh from the last Hindu king Raja Tahir in the Battle of Aror. He was the first Muslim to have successfully captured Hindu territories and initiate the early Islamic India in 712 AD. A significant development during the Umayyad rule was the establishment of the navy, thus leading to further successes. Muslim rule was strengthened by the conquest of Spain. Cordoba was the capital of the Umayyad Empire in Spain. This period saw great growth as knowledge, science, arts, architecture, and scholarship were patronized. The Umayyads also built canals to supply water and roads to improve travel for traders and pilgrims to Mecca and Medina. Arabic was made the state language and a postal service was introduced. In the Middle East, the Umayyad dynasty came to an end in 750 when the Abbasids defeated them. Abdulrahman, the only one of the Umayyads who survived, re-established the Umayyad dynasty in Spain, where it ruled for another 300 years. A remarkable civilization developed which made Cordoba and Granada grand and highly cultured cities. Muslim rule in Spain eventually weakened and came to an end in 1492. Students, before the Umayyad, Islamic rule was non-centralized. The military was organized under the Caliphate, a political structure led by a Muslim steward known as a caliph, who was regarded as the religious and political successor to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The early caliphate had a strong army and built garrison towns, but it did not build sophisticated administration. The Umayyad Caliphate expanded the Islamic Empire into one of the largest empires in the history of the world. At its peak, the Umayyad Caliphate controlled the Middle East, parts of India, much of North Africa, and Spain. The Umayyads made several important contributions to the Islamic Empire. As the empire expanded, opposition to the Umayyads increased, and in this way the empire came to an end in 1492. The Abbasids 750 to 1258. The Abbasids moved their government to Iraq, where they founded the city of Baghdad, which became their capital. Baghdad was famous as the most cultured and civilized city in the world at that time. Their two most important rulers were Harun al-Rashid and his son Mamun. Under the Abbasids from 752 to 1258, the civilization of Islam bloomed, grew, strengthened, and came to be known as the Golden Age of Islam. Greek and Latin texts were translated into Arabic and medical schools were set up. Mamun al-Rashid established the Baitul Hikmah, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. Many places of learning and also hospitals were set up in the main cities. The Muslims made great contributions and advances in science and mathematics. The Abbasid dynasty came to an end in 1258 with the attack by the Mongols under their warlord Hulagu Khan. He sacked and destroyed Baghdad completely, killing thousands of its inhabitants. The greatest loss, apart from human lives, were the libraries, which contained knowledge collected and produced by Muslims over the past 5 centuries. Here, sacked, dismissed, and inhabitants represent two residents of the particular area. So, Abbasids established government in Iraq in the city of Baghdad. Baghdad was the capital at that time. Two famous rulers were Harun al-Rashid and his son Mamun. Abbasids' age was considered golden age of Islam. They contributed in the culture and literature and education as Greek and Latin texts were translated into Arabic. Educational institutions and hospitals were established. The Golden Age of Muslim civilization. The expansion of the empire under the Umayyads and Abbasids also gave shape to a Muslim culture and civilization. Muslim scientists, astronomers, mathematicians, doctors, and philosophers contributed immensely greatly to technology and culture. They preserved, protected, maintained earlier traditions of ancient Greek learning and translated them into Arabic, as we have read already about it. Adding their own knowledge, they were able to innovate to develop something new and progress in every scientific field. This development of learning is also linked to geography as Muslim merchants began to travel the known world for trading goods and took their faith to other lands. Their influence over land trade routes from Arabia to Asia and Africa to Arabia made them wealthy, and they came back with new inventions. Samarkand. Samarkand, at present city of Uzbekistan. Cordoba, southern Spain, or Cairo, capital of Egypt, became centers of learning with universities, libraries, laboratories, and schools. A unique form of Islamic art developed in the writing of manuscripts. A unique form of Islamic art developed in the writing of manuscripts. Manuscript is a book or other documents written by hand. Calligraphy. Calligraphy is a visual art related to writing. It is the design and execution of lettering with a pen or ink brush, etc. As an art form, was used on mosques and buildings as a decorative medium. Since Islam does not allow the depiction, the action of depicting something, especially in a work of art, depiction of the human form in design, work, and geometrical patterns in tile work became typical of Islamic buildings. So, the Islamic Golden Age was a period of cultural, economic, and scientific flourishing in the history of Islam. In this age, Muslim scientists, astronomers, mathematicians, doctors contributed a lot. They did much effort to preserve ancient Greek knowledge and translated the books into Arabic. Other dynasties. Some other dynasties that also ruled the Muslim territories after the Abbasids were Fatimids (910 to 1171). They were based in Egypt, where they founded their capital Cairo. Their empire stretched from eastern Arabia and Syria in the east to Egypt and northern Africa up to Morocco in the west. Fatimid political and religious dynasty that dominated an empire in North Africa and subsequently in the Middle East. It took its name from Fatima, daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Seljuk 1047 to 1194. They were of Turco-Persian origin and were mainly based in Turkey. Their empire covered Turkey, Uzbekistan, the Persian Gulf, and Oman. So, students, Turkish dynasties that ruled over large parts of Asia. Ayubid 1169 to 1250. The dynasty was founded by Nuruddin Zengi and was based in Syria. Its most famous ruler was Salahuddin Ayyubi, known for his chivalry and generosity. Chivalry, very polite, honest; generosity, the quality of being kind. So, the Ayyubid dynasty was a Muslim dynasty which ruled Egypt, Syria, Yemen, etc. The Ayyubids were the family dynasty of Salahuddin, the famous Muslim hero of the Crusades. Mamluk 1250 to 1517. Mamluk means slave in Arabic. This dynasty came into being under rulers of Turks and Mongol origin. After the death of Salahuddin, their empire covered Syria, Palestine, and Egypt. So, Mamluk slave soldier, a member of one of the armies of slaves that won political control of several Muslim states. Mamluk generals established their power from Egypt and Syria. The name is derived from an Arabic word for slave. Now come to the questions. 1. How did the Roman Empire in Europe come to an end? Answer. The Roman civilization was gradually replaced by the rise and spread of Christianity, despite the persecution of early Christians. The conversion of Byzantine ruler Constantine to Christianity in the early 4th century was the beginning of Rome's decline. At the same time, with corrupt rulers, the weak government, and attacks by barbarian tribes from North and West Europe in the 5th century CE, the Roman Empire collapsed in 476. 2. Which part of the Roman Empire continued for another 1000 years? Name its main rulers. Answer. The fall of the Roman Empire meant the end of a highly developed way of life. Europe entered to the period of Middle Ages known as Dark Ages, which lasted for nearly 1000 years, century 500 to 1500. The eastern half of the Roman Empire, known as Byzantine Empire, continued under rulers like Heraclius, Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II. 3. How and when did the Byzantine Empire come to an end? Answer: the eastern half of the Byzantine Empire continued under rulers like Heraclius (610 to 641) till their defeat by Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II in 1453. Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II made Constantinople the capital of Ottoman Empire, renaming it in Istanbul. 4. How did the Middle Ages affect the Europe? Answer: Europe entered the period known as Middle Ages, which lasted for nearly 1000 years, century 500 to 1500, from the half of the Roman Empire to the Age of Discovery and Renaissance. This period is also known as the Dark Ages because of the collapse of law and order and civilized life, and the lack of interest in knowledge. 5. What was the impact of Islam on Arabia? Name the two main cities where the faith took root. Answer: Islam as a religion took root in the holy cities of Mecca and Medina in Arabian Peninsula. By the time of demise of Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in 632, all of Arabia had converted to Islam. 6. Briefly explain how the Khulafai Rashidin Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu strengthened and expanded Muslim rule. Answer: Hazrat Abu Bakr Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu, in his short tenure 632 to 634, further consolidated the religion in Peninsula by defeating false prophets and rebels. The next victory was the defeat of Byzantine Empire, and as a result Syria also came under Muslim rule. Under the rightly guided Khulfa Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu, especially Hazrat Umar Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu, Persia, Egypt, the Middle East and North Africa became part of Islamic Empire. The extent of Muslim influence stretched from the borders of China in the east to the Pyrenees in the west, covering the Indian subcontinent, Central Asia, the Middle East, North Africa, Sicily, and the Iberian Peninsula, Spain. Hazrat Usman Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu also strengthened the frontiers of the Islamic Empire. 7. Give the extent of Muslim Empire. Name the regions which came under Muslim rule. Answer: the extent of Muslim Empire influence stretched from the borders of China in the east to the Pyrenees mountain in west, covering the Indian subcontinent, Central Asia, the Middle East, North Africa, Sicily, and the Iberian Peninsula, Spain. 8. When and by whom was the Umayyad dynasty founded? How long did their rule last in the Middle East? Answer: Umayyads dynasty ruled from 661 to 750, and it was established by Amir Muawiyah Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu, and it expanded the Muslim territories within a century of its coming to power. In the Middle East, the Umayyad dynasty came to an end in 750 when the Abbasids defeated them. 9. Who was Abdulrahman and why is he famous? Answer: Abdulrahman, the only one of the Umayyads who survived, re-established the Umayyad dynasty in Spain, where it ruled for another 300 years. A remarkable civilization developed which made Cordoba and Granada grand and highly cultured cities. Muslim rule in Spain eventually weakened and came to an end in 1492. 10. When and where was the Abbasid dynasty established? Name its two main rulers. Answer: Abbasids dynasty established in 750. The Abbasids moved their government to Iraq, where they founded the city of Baghdad, which became their capital. Baghdad was famous as the most cultured and civilized city in the world at that time. Their two most prominent rulers were Harun al-Rashid and his son Mamun. 11. What role did Salahuddin Ayyubi play in the conquest of Jerusalem? Answer. Salahuddin al Kurdish Muslim succeeded Nuruddin Zengi and ruled over Egypt, Syria, Mesopotamia, Hijaz, and Yemen. After this, he launched a campaign against the Crusaders who controlled Jerusalem, and then he conquered most of Crusaders' states, including the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Thanks for listening. For new videos, don't forget to subscribe my channel. And if you like my videos, please share and like.